Hello, friends. This is Michael Boehm with Youth Apologetics Training. Today we're going to have Carl Teichrib of ForcingChange.org on. Again, Forcing Change, that's an online magazine. Carl Teichrib has been on once before. We talked about Freemasonry. Today we're going to talk about transformational festivals. Now, these are happening all over the world. This is a little bit new to me, and I think it's going to be a little shocking to you guys. But this movement is sweeping the youth of the United States, Canada, all over the world. Really, these events are happening. Some of them are really large. I mean, we're talking one of the more recent ones, 360,000 people in attendance. Guys, I mean, that's like instant city just popping up out of the dirt. So anyway, yeah, we're going to be talking to Carl Teichrib. Again, that's with ForcingChange.org. And so with that, Carl, welcome to the Youth Apologetics Training Podcast.
Well, it's good to be with you again, Mike.
So, Carl, last time we talked about Freemasonry, and we got into some interesting occult subjects, in a sense, Freemasonry being... boy, it's a subject in and of itself. I mean, we really got down and dirty with that, and I got a lot of good feedback on that series. But now we want to talk about transformational festivals. Now, they've been going on, sounds like they've been going on all over the world, and I didn't take this very seriously until I started hearing just how big some of these are, and the philosophy / worldview that's being pushed in these festivals. Can you tell my listeners, what is a transformational festival?
Yeah, no problem. And I'm going to quickly back up on that just briefly. Mike, I do quite a bit of research on globalization. I mean, that's my forte is understanding the trends of globalization. And in the past, I've focused a tremendous amount of time and attention on the political side of one world, the religious side of one world, and the worldview that underlies all of it, that being oneness, that we're all connected, we're all interdependent, man, nature, and God, we're all one. And so I've spent quite a bit of time focusing on the political, the religious, and even the technological side as it relates to transhumanism. But if this worldview, if this idea of oneness is a dominant worldview, and I believe it is the dominant worldview, if it is, then you're going to see it also express itself in culture. And that's what transformational festivals are all about. It is the celebration of oneness. It is the celebration that we are one world, one humanity. We are coming together under the umbrella of oneness, under the umbrella of creating a new myth, a new reality, a new ethos, a new way of looking at the world. And it's done in ways that it is celebratory, it is exciting, it is appealing. And I can definitely see the appeal of transformational festivals and transformational events. One thing your listeners will need to understand is that there's a wide range of what these events look like. There's no real model for one to fit into. You have everything from events like Burning Man, which has a heavy emphasis on art, organic community, the celebration of human inventiveness and imagination, and it could be as broad as that, or it could be all the way to concert events like Tomorrow World, which just happened outside of Atlanta, Georgia, where it's a concert, and as such, it's not simply just a music venue, but while the concert is the main feature of it, it pushes a worldview, and it does so from the very beginning to the very end, and the organizers understand that there's a worldview being expressed in the concert, and the worldview being oneness. We're all one. We're all one human family. We're all celebrating our global, interdependent, cosmic oneness together. And now we're looking to birth this, to model this as a way of existing, and to infuse this around the world in our cultural thinking. And I guess on the other side of the pendulum swing, you have full-blown pagan pagan conferences, full-blown pagan events and gatherings, and some of them have been around for a long, long time. Those events have been gathering steam as well, as the pagan side really expresses oneness, no holds barred. And so I've been working on these aspects of cultural oneness, cultural globalization, and the expressions of it. I've been exploring this now for, I guess a few years already. But last year, I finally dived in last year and wrote an extensive essay on this particular topic. And I did that last August 2013. And it got circulated, and I didn't think much of it. I thought, okay, this probably isn't resonating with people. But in a little while, all of a sudden I was receiving emails, Facebook comments. People were saying, this is my son, this is my daughter. This was me. I was involved in this. And I realized very quickly that this is something that is sweeping the world. It's certainly sweeping the United States and Canada, my country. And it has a ton of energy, a ton of enthusiasm, an amazing amount of appeal for our young people. And in fact, a lot of people express this as a new spirituality for a new generation, and it is being done in the form of dance, ritual, sacred spaces, the music floor, and the whole sense of this experience, an immersive experience where you're not just an observer, you participate in the change, you participate in this immersive, mythical type of atmosphere. And the intent is that it does change your worldview. It does change the way you think about God, yourself, nature, humanity. It's meant to transform your consciousness, and it does that very effectively.
Oh, wow. So by oneness, you're talking about more of like a pantheism, maybe even panentheism type worldview, where we are all a part of God. God is within us. What is that? Namaste?
Yeah. Well,
Sorry. We were talking about how I was up in Boulder earlier today. Boy, in Boulder, everybody's got to have a Subaru and either a sticker on the back that says tolerance or a sticker that says Namaste. The divine in me blesses the divine in you. But, so is that basically what you're getting at there? That we are all one, we're all part of God, there is this God consciousness within us.
Right.
Perhaps you might even call it the Christ consciousness.
Right. And one thing that transformational festivals do is promote and advance that idea. You experience it. You get the feel of it. There's a flavoring of that. And this is something that organizers have recognized, participants, they admit it, they recognize it, they talk about it, they gush about it, that we are experiencing our divine, we're encountering our divine, and we are now blossoming in that self-realized divinity. This is something that it's not hidden. You don't have to dig too terrible deep to find conference organizers and participants, transformational festival organizers and participants who hold to that line of thinking and indeed shape the entire event and the interaction around that event through that lens of our own divinity, our oneness between man, nature, and God.
Wow.
And not everybody might realizes that is the intent. For some, they're just going for the music. They're just going for the conference. Pardon me, not the conference, but the experience, that ecstatic expression of reality. And they're going with the idea of we're just coming for the concert, we're coming to party, to dance, and to have a good time. And this is something organizers have recognized too. A lot of them are coming for that concert experience, but they're leaving having been immersed with a new reality that there's a sacred side, a spiritual side, and that this concert/festival has facilitated that for them.
Interesting. Now now I can't even remember if you said this before or after we started recording, but you talked about Tomorrow World.
Right.
Just took place. I think I read that there was 360,000 people that attended.
Yeah, that was Tomorrowland. Tomorrowland had...
Oh, okay.
The two are different, though the organization, the company that hosts them is the same. Tomorrowland is the event that takes place in Belgium, and it is a massive music festival. This summer they had 360,000 people that came for 2 weekends. It sold out in under an hour. Last year's event pulled together 180,000. It was only held on one weekend, and it sold out in apparently 1 second, or just a little less than a second, as 2.2 million people jammed the lines at the same time trying to secure one of those 180,000 tickets.
That's insane.
It is insane, but that demonstrates the enthusiasm and the energy. And indeed, Tomorrowland has its own globally chartered airliner, and planes fly from cities around the globe, bringing people into Tomorrowland. What's fascinating is that this is a concert. That's the bottom line. It's a music concert, but from beginning to end, it expresses oneness. And in fact, it does so in ways that you just cannot ignore. It opens up with a myth. The entire thing creates a myth-like atmosphere. You've entered the world of imagination. You've entered the world of a new myth. There's so much symbology within the concert itself, and then also the pre-concert and the post-concert follow-up. It's inescapable. Even between the different sets and the different musicians in the concert, you have the stage, which sometimes is a massive sun face or a book face. I mean, these are massive stage settings, and they're literally like they're coming alive, and it tells you all about how we're all one, and the world needs to come together in unity, global oneness. I mean, they don't hide it. That's what this is about. But you're coming to party, you're coming to dance, you're coming to immerse yourself in the music, and at the same time, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, you're being fed something, you're being preached to.
Yeah, I was reading that the stage actually interacts with the crowd. That Sun will teach in between sets. It'll teach about oneness. That's fascinating to me. And I've been to a lot of rock concerts in my time, and I've never seen or heard of anything like that before. Mm-hmm. Where you actually get that type of indoctrination that happens. Well, I also was... Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's not the only one. And this is what makes transformational festivals, especially those that have a musical component or where music becomes the backbone to it, it makes it so interesting in that the stage itself is a part of your interaction. It's not just simply a place for musicians to put their sound equipment. The stage is interacting with you. You are interacting with the stage. There is art installations placed around you. There are workshops you can go to, depending, of course, on which festival you're attending. There are seminars. There's yoga tents. Some places there are sacred spaces. In fact, in a lot of transformational festivals, you're going to have sacred spaces. Some will have temples. Lightning in a Bottle has a temple of consciousness. Burning Man.
What do you mean by a sacred space?
A sacred space is a place where they will put a little shrine. There may be Buddha images, a place that's supposed to be set aside for meditative, spiritual connections, a place even where you can go and do yoga, do group yoga, involve yourself in group ritualistic performances. And they don't, that's what they describe it as. This is a ritual. This is a sacred ritual experience. And so that's part of these events as well. Not all, like, again, Tomorrow World and Tomorrowland. That's the concert side of it. That's the music, with still that driving ideology of oneness. Whereas other ones, like Lightning in a Bottle in Southern California, bringing together 15,000 people, is noted for its sacredness and sacred spaces. its temple of consciousness, a place to come and connect with the cosmos, with the oneness of mankind. So there's a full spectrum of how the message is coming forward. But what's interesting, Mike, is it's not that this is just a message that's taking place there at these transformational events. What's interesting is that organizers and people involved in this movement recognize that what really is happening is that they are simply mirroring what's already taking place in society. What your neighbor, your family, your friends, your co-workers already accept. And they're simply mirroring this, modeling it, and now experimenting and exploring what this new world looks like.
Oh, wow. I also heard that some of these festivals are incorporating, did you hear about that craze about eye dosing a while back? Kids were using there's some kind of binaural beats and types of music that actually induce altered states of mind. In fact, almost like they were taking some kind of a drug. I've heard some of these festivals try to take that same mode by using certain types of music that really induce altered states of mind.
That's new. I haven't seen or explored that side of it. I do know that drugs and altered states of consciousness go hand in hand, and that the experience of the rituals, the shamanistic experiences that take place, is all about creating an altered state of consciousness, a new world view that all goes with it. So that wouldn't surprise me in the least. Some of these events are very open in terms of the goal of having a change of mind and an altered conscious experience. And some of them, things like Burning Man, is well known for the drug culture that's a part of it, for the drugs, the substance issues that come along, and so that wouldn't surprise me in the least that what you're describing would be a part of some of these events.
What is Burning Man?
Oh, golly. Mike, Burning Man is an event that's been around since the late 1980s. It started in 1986. It started off with just simply burning an effigy of a human on the beach of San Francisco, partying with a few dozen people. And then from there, it ended up catching the attention of different people and different organizations, including the Cacophony Society. And it grew and grew. In fact, at one point, all of a sudden, they realized they didn't have the space they needed. And to be frank, they had too much police attention. So they ended up going to the deserts of northern Nevada. And since the early 1990s up until now, it's seen pretty much steady growth. This year's Burning Man event had approximately 70,000 people that came to it. And in the 1990s, it was almost completely a bohemian type of an encounter. Clothing optional, burn stuff, blow stuff up, shoot stuff, do drugs. I mean, just go crazy. And in fact, I know people who were embedded back then when it was still kind of the Wild West. Since the year 2000, and particularly in the last 8 years, it has gained a remarkable sense of cultural identity. Now it's about the art. It's about the conscious experience. Yes, the clothing is still optional. Yes, there's still lots of drugs. Yes, there's still craziness. But the entire thing is wrapped up in this experience of modeling a new way of looking at reality, modeling a new conscious experience. And so you have art installations that speak to it. You have lectures and workshops if you want to attend those. Theme camps that are all about oneness. And actually theme camps about almost anything under the sun, including all kinds of sexual experiences if you're interested in things like that. I mean, it is wild. It's a crazy party. But it's a party now with a purpose. And that purpose is the transformation of people's thinking to accept a new worldview. And what is interesting is Burning Man in the last number of years has incorporated a very phenomenally accepted temple structure. They just don't simply burn the effigy anymore. Of course, that's what they do. They burn the effigy on Saturday night. This year was 120-foot high effigy with the arms outstretched above the head of the man, and they burned it on on Saturday night, and my wife and I have watched a live feed of the event for a number of years, and it's pretty exciting. Lots of fireworks. There's fire priests, fire drummers, fire virgins, fire dances. I mean, it's very bacchanalian. It goes back to the idea of here is a wild, ecstatic, ritualistic kind of encounter. And so that's the flavoring of it. On Sunday, they burn the temple. And it's usually a very large structure where people all week have poured out their grief, their emotions, spent time meditating, putting trinkets and pictures and different things in there that have meant something to them in a personal way. And so on Sunday, when they burn the temple, it's a very different mood. It's not partying, it's not wild and crazy, it's quiet and somber and serious and sacred. So that's kind of gives you a bit of a sense of Burning Man. But Burning Man is one of the more important ones because it became a trendsetter for how a lot of these other transformational festivals would look. And it's not just simply an important trendsetter. It has now become a place where Fortune 500 companies come. Google goes to Burning Man. Facebook goes to Burning Man. Second Life goes to Burning Man. Silicon Valley goes to Burning Man.
Huh. And what are they doing there?
Well, it's basically a week of do whatever you want. It's a week of art and art installations, of big music and theme camps, a place where you can dress up, you can be something that only your imagination can conceive of, and you spend a week partying and living in this alternative universe.
But what is Google and Facebook? What are they up to when they're at these events?
Oh, it's understood that Burning Man and events like Burning Man, but especially Burning Man, that this is the cutting edge of society. This is the cutting edge of culture. This is a place. This is a place to interact with people who will give you a sense of where the market will be going. This will give you a sense of where society will accept or not accept some of the ideas that you will put forward as a company. And so it's a place, even for companies like Facebook and Google, to experiment, to model, to question, to ask, to spend time interacting, and there's even been a wide open recruitment right there on the spot. So it's not just a place for hippie types. This is mainstreamed already.
Okay, so in your opinion, how influential is this movement?
Oh, hugely influential. When you're having the numbers that we've been describing, it's not fringe. When you have 70,000 people coming to the desert of northern Nevada, that's not fringe anymore. When you literally have a city that is birthed out of the desert, that's not fringe. When you have 2.2 million people like last year, all vying for one of 180,000 tickets, that's no longer fringe. When you have 360,000 attending this year's double weekend Tomorrowland, that's not fringe. When you have 140,000 people jamming the venue outside of Atlanta, Georgia for Tomorrow World, that's not fringe either. When you have 17,000 people going to the Fairy Festival on the East Coast, again, 17,000, that represents already sizable numbers.
The Fairy Festival.
Oh, yeah. In fact, that's some of the nuances of the transformational movement is that you have, as I said earlier, a wide swing of how these festivals and encounters look, from simply concerts that incorporate the theme and the message of oneness like Tomorrowland, to the weird encounters and the surreal landscape and the surreal experiences of Burning Man, to things that outright accept and play with mythological elements. And so there are a number of fairy festivals across the U.S., including the West Coast, where the point is that you dress like fairies, you dress like elves, you dress like otherworldly, mythical beings, and there's a worldview built around it of expressing yourself and connecting with nature divinities, the spirits of the earth, the spirits of the trees, this type of thing.
Oh. Wow. I see where the tie-in to both, well, Eastern mysticism as well as elements of Wicca.
Oh, yeah.
Here.
Yes, that does exist. That all exists as part of it. I have to clarify something. This spring, I gave a lecture, the first of a series of lectures I've given on the rise of transformational festivals. And again, I came to this trying to find the cultural side of how oneness is being expressed. I understood the political, the religious, the economic, the transhuman side. I understood it from the side of esoteric groups, things like Freemasonry and Theosophy and Rosicrucianism. All the studies have gone into it. But in trying to understand the cultural side is how I kind of bumped into the transformational festival scene. And yes, I understood that there was I understood Burning Man was a huge part of it, but I didn't really realize how pervasive and how global the phenomena was until last year when I started digging around. And then this spring, I still only saw things in kind of only partially how it was being fleshed out. And so when I gave my first talk on this subject, my first and my second talk, I believe as well, I was describing this to my audience that you're seeing about 120 to 150 of these events worldwide, which is a pretty fair number. But Mike, I was wrong. I was really, really wrong. There's not 120 or 150 of these events. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, potentially 1,000 or more. And I have started an undertaking, a project where I've been using Google Maps, started pinning just the ones in North America. And already sections of Canada and the U.S. have a pile of pins. Right now, I'm just looking, I open up the Google Earth project I've got going right now, and just your state of Colorado. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I've got about, another 6 or so needing to be pinned with explanations given for what the events represent. They're all over the place. That's why this last year, 2013, one of the organizers for Burning Man described the whole transformational scene and especially the role Burning Man has played, described it this way, that demand far outpaces supply.
Oh, man. Boy. See, when I was younger, people talked about things like the Rainbow Gathering. I don't know if that's anywhere affiliated with this.
Absolutely.
And that was a big deal. It was really hard to get to it. It was a challenge to be a part of it.
Right.
And if you were somebody who actually got to go to one of these Rainbow Gatherings, boy, you were the chosen seed. I mean, you know.
And in fact, the transformational scene recognizes Rainbow Gatherings as simply one piece of the entire package. Definitely.
Interesting.
Yeah, because Rainbow Gatherings are preaching the same thing. And they're just doing it in the woods the backwoods of a national park in different parts of the U.S. every year. And you're right, it's hard to get to, and sometimes it's even hard to find out where they're being held.
So what we're seeing here is it's more of a postmodern worldview. It's very spiritual, so more of that modern look on the world where evolution is king is not really something that's embraced in these festivals. It's very spiritual, very pantheistic. The God in me is mixing and becoming one with the God in everyone.
Right. And they view this as an evolutionary step forward. They definitely will hold that position. What is interesting is that this is going beyond already the postmodern mindset. And that's something that I've been fleshing out and have done so listening and interacting with individuals who have been writing about these transformational events from the side that supports it. And what's interesting is with postmodernism. Postmodernism rejected modernity. Modernity was all about materialism, secularism, and postmodernism basically rejected that. But postmodernism didn't have a framework to attach itself with. It was about searching. Truth was subjective. Your truth is your truth. My truth is my truth. It didn't really have any type of grounding. There was Eastern mystical aspects to it. The idea of spirituality was being explored. But it really, when you took a look at postmodernism, it really is almost a baseless way of thinking, because you weren't attaching yourself to something that was grounded. It was experiential, but not with any sense of real purpose or meaning. These festivals and the festival goers and those who organize and put these festivals together, many of them recognize that this is now the expression of the next epoch. We're going beyond postmodernism. In fact, we're going beyond it because now we do have a framework. Now we do have something to ground ourselves in. We do have a purpose. It's no longer just groping and rejecting everything and at the same time trying to experience everything. No, now we have something that we can tangibly grab hold of. And that is the idea that man, nature, God is one. It's a grounding upon earth-based spirituality, a human cosmic unity. It is finally a recognition that what we're really doing is involving ourselves with the re-enchantment of society. And that's the terminology that they're using. They're saying, we're not postmodern. Postmodernism, yes, we were birthed out of it, but now we're entering a new epoch, and it's the idea here of re-enchantment. We are now experiencing, tangibly trying to experience a new myth.
We've now gone postmodern.
Yes, we have. Yeah, and that's how they describe it.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Interesting. Now, one subject that I would love to get into someday with you is transhumanism. Is there a tie-in?
There's certainly somewhat of a tie-in. Some transhumanists recognize Burning Man as an example of a transhumanist way of viewing the world, because Burning Man, particularly Burning Man, is an event where you're looking to escape the bounds and supersede the bounds of normalcy. You're looking to create not just simply a new individual, not a new human, but a new human experience. And so there are transhumanists who will look at Burning Man as an event that demonstrates the idea of going beyond ourselves, grasping for something higher than ourselves. There is one transformational event, I believe it's in North Carolina, that is geared towards almost exclusively the technological side of transhumanism, the philosophy of transhumanism, the birth of all of this within a festival setting where there is all the components of a transformational festival, and it is geared towards the advancement of mankind through technology.
Huh. Interesting.
And it has that festival component. It's called the Moog Fest.
The Moog?
Yes, the Moog Fest. I believe it's in Asheville, North Carolina.
Huh. Yeah, I'm on Facebook's Transformational Festivals community page, and I'm blown away just scrolling down the page just how many of these are out there. I mean, it's just one ad after another of different transformational festivals. And that's their terminology, transformational.
That's right. That is their terminology. I didn't make up the word. That's their language. I'm using it in this conversation we've been having. I've been using as much of their language as possible because it speaks volumes.
Huh. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of pictures that look very, for a lack of a better way to say it, very drug-induced. Looks like a lot of drug people. I'm seeing aura paintings.
Yes, that's side.
Stuff that looks very Eastern mysticism / Buddhism. Some fairly sensual-looking stuff.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that.
Man alive.
Yes.
People need to put some clothes on.
It really blends together a variety of different aspects that we in the West, if we would look back in terms of our tradition, our Christian, Judeo-Christian values, we look back and go, okay, that doesn't fit the Judeo-Christian framework. In fact, it's really the exact opposite of it. And that includes the acceptance of Eastern mysticism. When you discuss the artwork, there's so much artwork that's involved, and I love art. I enjoy artwork. In fact, there's a number of variety of artistic expressions I find very, very interesting. But here, art is one of those vehicles that is being used to express this new imaginative reality, this new myth, the going within and experiencing the divinity of humanity. So yeah, and this is something that people need to realize. It's not just about the dance. It's not just about the music, because people get hung up on that. We've always had dance, Mike. We've always had music. We've always had parties. We've always had community coming together. We've always had art. What we're seeing here is the integration of all of these different strands in a celebration atmosphere, and the expression here of celebrating our oneness through these different vehicles, and it becomes simply just the conduit through which the message is driven. And again, this is why it's so important. What is the worldview all about? What is it preaching? What is it teaching? What is it trying to convey? That's more important necessarily than just simply the fact that there is electronic dance music, or that there is interactive stages, or interactive art, or visionary artistic expressions. We have to ask, okay, what is it that you're selling me?
Huh.
And when we ask that and explore that, we realize, oh, all of these events have a commonality. And it could be, the events themselves could be very diverse, but there is always a commonality, and that commonality is we are one. We're now seeking to experience that oneness. We're seeking to advance and push and propel that oneness through our celebration.
You know, with all of the conflicts that are going on in the world that are sparked by religion, well, okay, I'll just throw it out there. With all that's going on with Islam right now, they're on the far end of one spectrum of fanatical, fundamental faith, okay? Cutting people's heads off, and all of the violence that's been going on, the bloodshed. And then on the other far end of the spectrum is these fundamental Christians that hold tight to their belief systems and call sin, and trust in the Lord Jesus Christ. And I see this potential conflict going down here where as the world gets fed up with fanatical Islam, all faiths are going to get lumped together, and there's going to be this time where we all just want to become one. We want to basically reject anything that is exclusive, has exclusive truth claims, and go with a tolerant, one-size-fits-all faith. And I see these transformational festivals where a lot of our youth are being swept away by it, quite possibly could be part of that vehicle that gets us there.
Yes. In fact, that's interesting that you bring up Islam, because Islam has a faction that does speak to the idea of a mythical reality, a more mystical union, and that is Sufism. Sufism, as an Islamic generated belief structure, really is all about connecting with higher principles, the higher divine, on and on and on. And so you even see elements at some of these events where Sufism is placed, the symbols, the imagery of Sufism is placed within some of these festivals that we've been talking about. Tomorrowland uses Sufi imagery quite often in some of the trailers, and you're going to see little elements of Sufism pop in and out as you watch some of the trailers for Tomorrowland.
Wow, fascinating. So, and I also heard at Tomorrowland, you were to place a mark on your right hand. It was like it's a bracelet. It's got a kind of an eye of Horus on there, the illumined eye, and it's kind of it's a cashless society. You show up with this bracelet on, and any purchases you want to make, you do it with your bracelet, probably an RFID or smart card type technology. That's kind of interesting too. Have you heard anything about that?
There's a little bit, yes. There's so many things that these festivals, especially the ones that are more technologically driven, like Tomorrowland, where they all incorporate some pretty interesting technology. Again, we talked a little bit earlier about the stages and so on. The bracelet side of it for Tomorrowland, yes, you purchase a bracelet. It's a unique bracelet, and this bracelet gives you access to the festival, to campsites. It's a bracelet that it's not just simply a how do you say this? It's not just simply an identifier to say, hey, I bought my ticket, blah blah blah. It's a little bit more than that. It's supposed to help connect you in and give you a sense of identity. In fact, you can even order it and have a nice little box that it comes in. It goes beyond just simply an identifier to say, hey, yeah, I bought my ticket. It's more like it becomes something that connects you to the event and allows you to remember it in a way that's very tangible. The technology of some of these events, it ranges in everything. It ranges all the way from massive, moving, interactive stages, phenomenal technology in terms of lighting, sound, even the organizing of it, all the way to events like the rainbow gatherings, which are not technologically driven at all, which are literally going into the woods and getting lost in the bush, so to speak. A real mix, a real eclectic mix. But again, why then we have to study this and try to understand it is so that we can grasp what each of these events are trying to say, what they're preaching, and again, right from Tomorrowland to the rainbow gatherings to Burning Man to Lightning in a Bottle to Lucidity to the Universal Religion Trance Dance Festival in Nepal, all the way through. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of these events. Again, what the worldview here is that we are all coming together as one, and we are celebrating that as a type of mirroring of where society already is at.
Oh, boy. Yeah. So, Carl, what do you suggest can be done to push back?
That's interesting. I would suggest here a couple of things. Number one, don't go there with bullhorns. Don't.
You're going to hell. Repent.
The thing is, I know people who go to some of these types of events and go as ambassadors of Jesus Christ. And the one thing that in talking to them comes out is there is a fear that Christians will push back against these events and will do so by attacking the event and attacking the individuals who go to these events and doing it in a way that is maybe truthful but not loving, going with bullhorns or going with a placard or trying to boycott or, making it very obvious. And the fear is that in doing so, all we're going to do is strengthen the stereotype that already exists with those people. So, what do we do? Well, I have friends and I have contacts who do go to places like Burning Man and the Holly Festival in Salt Lake City and in some of these other different venues. And they're going literally to rub shoulders with the people. Regarding Burning Man, they're going and handing out bottles of water. One of my contacts is a friend who goes and he spends time changing tires on the side of the road when people have flats, because with 70,000 people coming in and out, things happen. He's handing out bottles of water. He hoists an Israeli flag with his tent just outside of the city gates a couple of miles away. That itself becomes a lightning rod for people. And people come and ask, what are you doing here? And it opens up all kinds of conversations. And when he changes tires or when he hands out bottles of water, people are asking, what are you doing this for? And it creates an opening. And he's had some fascinating conversations. I have friends who go to the Holly Fest in Salt Lake City. The Holly Fest is a transformational event that takes place in one of the largest Hare Krishna temples on the planet. And it's one of the largest ones outside of India, and it's just outside of Salt Lake City. And so they go to witness, as Christians, they go to witness to Mormons, because there's predominantly Mormons going to the Holly Festival, in Salt Lake City. They're going to witness to the Mormons who are participating in a openly Hindu Hare Krishna Holly Festival. How twisted is all of this?
Huh.
So they go to interact with the Mormons who are there and to go up alongside and say, hey, dudes, why are you here at a Hindu festival? Obviously you're searching for something more. Let's have a little conversation here. Let's talk about maybe the real Jesus.
Yeah, amen to that.
Yeah.
And to, all those situations where, many of my listeners out there, I'm sure many know people who are going to these festivals. What do you think about, or what do you suppose would be a good approach to talking to these people and saying, hey, I know you've gone to these festivals, and trying to perhaps snap them out of this oneness frame of mind?
Well, that's a tough one. When I was at the Colorado Springs Prophecy Summit this summer, and I gave my presentation on transformational festivals, afterwards I had at least 6 different individuals come and say, hey, that's my son, that's my daughter. I had one individual that came and said, yes, I go to Burning Man, I've been to Burning Man, and yes, you're right, this is what we see, this is what happens. In other conferences that I've given similar lectures, another one that took place just in British Columbia earlier in the summer, I had a lady who was in tears because while her daughter was brought up with Christian values in a Christian home, she was now openly rejecting it because she's now encountered a new spirituality, a new ecstatic, exciting, inclusive, non-judgmental spirituality in these celebratory transformational festivals. And so she was heartbroken because it was ripping her whole family apart. It was ripping her whole family apart as her daughter was rejecting Christianity and accepting this other side. What it boils down to, Mike, is, and this is something I've had to explain to people over and over again, it becomes a very personal thing because you're realizing that individual lives are being affected, souls are being affected, and how can we then approach them? The only thing we can do is we can pray, we can continue to love, and we can continue to give them truth. But it's important to be able to give them truth and love at the same time, lest we drive them further away and put the wedge in deeper. And so sometimes that may mean we say strong things, but we do so in such a way that it is validated through acts of love. I think the best model we have for this is Jesus Christ with the woman at the well, where the woman at the well is of another culture. Jesus goes to where she is. Jesus doesn't condemn her. Her own sins condemn her already. And he engages in a very provocative, very powerful conversation with her without sometimes even giving away everything about himself, like up until the very end. And then finally he's there, there it is. You can either accept this or you reject it. That's the option that the woman at the well inevitably runs into. And so I think that's one area, that's one model that we can use. And if it's the model of Jesus, then it is the model that we need to look at. And the other one is Paul at Mars Hill, where he's encountering the trend centers of the day. Paul understands the worldview of Athens well enough. He can quote their own poets and philosophers. He leverages their own worldview to open up a conversation and bring about the truth of Jesus Christ, the character of God, and the nature of man. But he knows their worldview well enough that he can interact with it. He didn't wait for them to come to him.
Yeah, he used their worldview as a conversation starter, and he swings towards the supernatural, and then he jumps into the gospel.
Right. And along the way quotes their own poets.
Yeah.
So he wasn't ignorant of the time and the place that he was in. I would suggest in all of this, there's a model here for us to use, and that's the model of Jesus with the woman at the well, and that's the model of Paul at Mars Hill. I think if we can understand those two models, we begin then to have a framework to be able to approach oneness, transformational events, transformational festivals, and more importantly, transformational thinking that happens already within your families, your neighbors, and your communities. Again, these festivals are simply a mirror of what already exists all around us. And that's why it's important to talk about these events, but to realize that really what it boils down to is it means that we have to be a Christian witness right in our own communities, because that's where it begins.
It's interesting, too, because these festivals seem to be a mirror of just society as a whole.
Right.
We live in a world where everybody wants an experience now. I think our senses have been overloaded. We watch too much TV. We've got all these video games we can play. There's the internet. I mean, our senses are always being overloaded. And a faith where you just quietly sit in a church is no longer appealing. We want to go and experience something. We want to have a fanatical experience. And you see that also manifest with more of the hyper-charismatic types who they don't want to just go and learn about the Lord and read the Bible and worship God. They want to have a powerful experience where they're left twitching on the ground. And then you have the emergent church on the other side who wants to experience God with a very ultra-mystical experience with somewhat of a postmodern mindset where they question everything and answer nothing. It's just interesting to see this transformational festival phenomenon playing out, because, yeah, I can see where our society would just be drawn to that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's why a conversation like this is so important. The emergent church, it fits in a way with transformational festivals, or at least transformational culture, in that there is at least two transformational-like festivals. I'm not going to call them transformational festivals, but they're like that are incorporated within the emergent church experience. One of them takes place on the U.S. East. It's called, I believe it happens in North Carolina. I'm not quite sure. I know it's in one of the Carolinas, north and south. Forgive me at this point. I just can't remember. It's called the Wild Goose Festival. And while it doesn't incorporate trance dance music, it doesn't incorporate some of the other elements that take place in certain transformational festivals and events. It does seek to look to change and transform your way of thinking. And this year's Wild Goose Festival had a fair amount of workshops and lectures on gender alternatives, accepting same sex, that type of thing. So there is a transformative element to it, in that it looks to change what we would see as traditional biblical norms and accept the emergent church paradigm. And the emergent church paradigm is really very much geared towards the idea of oneness. We're all part of a global human family. We're all interconnected. We're all interdependent. It's the same language, and that's maybe because it's taken from the same playbook. I've read Phyllis Tickle's material. She is noted as a major emergent thinker. Her terminology, her language, her ideas very strongly parallel Barbara Marx Hubbard, who was one of the most, and still remains one of the most important New Age thinkers, who speaks openly about oneness and the need for global oneness. So it doesn't surprise me that there are some of these parallels, these side-by-side comparisons. They exist because I believe that ultimately they incorporate the same philosophy. One is antagonistic towards Christianity. The other one says we're about Christianity, and yet gives a different operational structure.
Interesting. Huh. And then I think another pull that I'm seeing here is the whole idea that, well, back in the garden, Satan said, you shall be like gods.
Right.
And boy, it sure is enticing to think, wow, I am divine. Now, I always am shocked when somebody thinks that way, because, I mean, hey, look, man, you're wearing glasses, you're getting a little gray, I noticed you've got some allergies going on, there's a tooth broken back in there,
right,
you're not
right.
healing yourself, what's going on? You're getting older, your mother just passed away, why didn't you stop that? You see, I always am shocked by that. No, we're not divine.
Right, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I'll use myself as an example, but I'll use one other person, the Dalai Lama of Tibet. A number of years ago, in 1999, I went to a couple of his major lectures, and went to some of the lectures that centered around the Kala Chakra rituals that took place in Bloomington, Indiana. And the Dalai Lama explained to us that he had seen millenniums come and go, and that what he was saying to us, in essence, was that there was a divinity to him. And this is something that I've encountered lots with New Agers, that we are looking to experience our own divine self, this type of thing. And at the same time, the Dalai Lama was telling us about his poor eyesight, his pimples, and he was surrounded by U.S. Secret Service. And I thought to myself, if you're divine, if you're God, this doesn't look too good. I mean, the model here seems to be a broken, fallen humanity. Mike, if I'm a God, why did I forget that piece of information and now have to be taught this? I mean, what kind of a God am I? If I bought myself at the God store, I have to take it back as defective. Really?
Well, yeah. If we're all gods, and as pitiful and messed up as we are, we're all still gods. What does the word God even mean anymore? I mean, we've watered it down to that extent. Well, hey, we're all gods. Okay.
I know.
I mean, what does that even mean?
I know.
At that point?
Yes, it gets to a point where it enters into a very strange reality. What is fascinating, though, is that oneness is the dominant worldview. It is the core of all ancient myths, and it's the core of our modern myths. What is fascinating is that there is a different worldview. There is an alternative worldview. And the very fact that this alternative worldview exists, and that this alternative worldview speaks not just against oneism, but by its nature, by its composition, is completely opposed to oneism. It is the exact opposite of oneness. The very fact that exists means that oneness itself is illusionary. Because if oneness is the only worldview, if that truly is what we are, well, then there would be no other alternative worldview to it. Especially one that at its very core, at its very essence, is other than oneness. And that other worldview comes through one source and one source only, and that is the Bible, the Old and New Testament, where God is not part of a great oneness. No, he is separate. He is distinct. He is transcendent. He is exalted. He is beyond and outside the created universe. In other words, there is God and then everything else. Peter Jones of Truth Exchange Ministries describes it as twoism, God and everything else. Oneness says, no, God and everything is all the same. And so here we have one diametrically opposed worldview, one written within Scripture. From the very beginning, when God creates heaven and earth with his own voice, he brings it about. He does it as somebody standing outside, literally, of time and space, creating something. He is transcendent. He is not being controlled or manipulated by time or space or by human actions. Not at all. Nothing at all that we can do can manipulate him. And yet, in the oneness worldview, especially in the old myths of it, it was all about trying to manipulate the gods and the goddesses to achieve certain actions and certain demands. No, the biblical worldview speaks out exactly opposite of the oneness worldview. And that's where the real crush. That's where the real conflict happens. That is why Christianity, expressed as exclusive truth through Jesus Christ, is not acceptable in the transformational worldview, because it speaks to something, not just simply that there is an alternative, but that alternative, by the very fact that it exists, demonstrates that oneness is a fallacy.
Right. This idea of oneness it's in a way, it's an attempt to escape the concept of sin,
right,
that we've all fallen short, that we all have sinned against a holy God. They refuse to accept that, and it's more of, no, we're all gods, and somewhere along the way we must have all lost our oneness. We must have forgotten that we're all part of this one, and now we're all just trying to realize it again and pull together as pieces and parts of the same God.
Right.
It's interesting too. I believe I've heard our new Jesuitical Pope even make some comments as of recently. I wish I had those quotes, but make some comments that were very oneness oriented.
Yes, and just a couple of weeks ago there was a great big interfaith celebration and conference that took place in South Korea, all about bringing the world religions together, because God is one and we are all one as part of God. I mean, this is the way of the world. This literally is the world way. When we're told not to be of the world, when you take a look at the worldview of the pagan worldview that was there in existence around the ancient Israelites, all of the pagan worldview spoke to this idea of continuity or oneness at its very core. It spoke to it. Yes, there was nuances and there's complexities to it, but really when you boiled it right down to its essence, it was all about this idea of continuity. Man, nature, and God, we're all one, and we're all, if we can manipulate it, if we can ritualize it, if we can experience it, we can actualize it. That was there then, and this is the same thing taking place today, which is why Ecclesiastes is so true when Ecclesiastes says there is nothing new under the sun. It's the same battle.
It goes all the way, it seems like it goes back to the Tower of Babel.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So I know that a lot of what we've been talking about here is hard for listeners to grasp if you've never heard this stuff before. It seems bizarre, it seems out there, it seems really complicated in some ways. I would suggest take the time to do a little bit of homework. There are some very interesting and well-done video presentations on transformational festivals. One advocate of it, G.K. Leung, gave a TEDx talk in Vancouver, British Columbia a couple of years ago. It's available online. It's a very good introduction to transformational festivals. I would certainly suggest people watch that. It will definitely give them some of the sights and sounds without necessarily having to wade through a lot of the garbage that's out there. Because even things like Burning Man, again, there's a lot of clothing optional stuff. Sometimes it's hard to find just imagery that doesn't have, somebody's skin showing somewhere or just some craziness. But there are some good resources to try to understand these events. And like I said, last year in August 2013, I put together a report on the subject. People can certainly grab that report. You can find it at forcingchange.org. If you're a member, you can download a copy of it or put it on your computer, share it, send it out to friends and neighbors and family, and especially to youth pastors, because this is a youth-generated movement, though all demographics potentially are part of it, but really youth are captivated by it because it is geared towards that exciting, ecstatic experience. And again, I understand that. In fact, I can totally get why people, and especially youth, are drawn to it. I can totally get that.
Oh yeah. It's a full, all-encompassing experience. Right. So, speaking of forcingchange.org, friends, Carl Teichrib does have a magazine. It's an online magazine, forcingchange.org. You got to check out his website. There are many free articles And then, of course, if you would like to subscribe to his online magazine, it comes down to about 15 cents per day. So it's pretty well priced, about $55 a year, and a wealth of information. Carl doesn't, as you guys saw today, he doesn't fall short on information. He really does his research, and a great magazine, a great resource. You guys really should check it out. Well, Carl, it has been a pleasure. This has, once again, you've delivered very interesting information, and boy, this is a subject that we really need to keep an eye on. I can see where this is going. This is not going away.
No, it's not.
I don't see this going away anytime soon.
No, and that's why organizers of Burning Man last year said demand far outpaces supply. One thing I think that would be very interesting to do, I don't have the resources. Hey, if somebody that's listening to this wants to underwrite a project, here's a project. I would love to look at somebody, myself, or I don't care, somebody else even, but somebody who's got their finger on this movement, go and do some social, spiritual surveys at these events. It would be, I think, Mike, it would be eye-opening to see how many come from either church backgrounds, how many know something of Christianity, or maybe even how many know nothing of Christianity, simply believing what they do about it without really understanding it at all. I think it would be very interesting to see what worldviews people have going into this and what views they've had and they have rejected as part of these encounters in these festivals. I think having some on-the-ground social, spiritual surveys would be a real powerful tool for the Christian community to grasp what's actually happening in the minds of people going to these events.
Wow, amen to that. Well, that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's an idea I've been floating around with. I have no idea how to go about, I know how to go about doing it and how to engage in it, but the resources are beyond myself. If somebody had the resources to do this, I think that would be absolutely fantastic. Go to 5 or 6 of these events, Burning Man being one, and begin to draw comparisons and have a fuller understanding of how these events, particularly how these events are being accepted by Christians or by people who've rejected Christianity, why they've rejected it, and what worldview is now being the replacement. I think it would be a real eye-opener for the church, because I have a strange feeling, and it's not simply a feeling based off of just a gut reaction, but one from listening to different interviews and spending time interacting with people. There's already a lot of folks who go to these events who have had a church background.
Interesting, yeah. With intel like that, boy, that would be so valuable.
Yes, it would. Yep.
In understanding what makes this group tick and potentially how we could reach out to them.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, it's an idea. If somebody wants to grab that idea, take it and run with it, it's, if somebody there already says, as my Bible college course requirements, I'm supposed to do some type of survey work, there you go. Run with it. Just send me the data, and I'll give you credit, and I would love to be able to spread it far and wide, because we need to understand this. I have a sneaking suspicion that this is something that, as we said earlier, it isn't going to go away, and eventually we're going to find that our youth going to our churches, the youth of our own families, our neighbors, they will make their way towards these events, because this represents a very exciting way of having the worldview of oneness actualized, not just simply talked about, but now experienced and lived out in very exciting ways.
All right, guys. Well, you heard it. If anybody out there wants to contact Carl Teichrib, forcingchange.org, and put something together. Boy, that's a great idea. So, Carl, boy, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Absolutely, Mike. Thanks for the opportunity of being on your show. I really appreciate the time that we could just spend talking about this very important topic.